Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm taking a look at Beta Ray Bill. Since I got his potential unlocked early, he is the first character that I'm going to be reviewing or taking a look at. I'm still waiting for the potential of Gladiator to unlock, so I haven't really had a chance to test them, but I heard that he is really strong in PvE content and is probably meta in things like ABX and ABL due to his really high hit count in his rotation. Thankfully, this update is a big improvement from the last one. The Epic Quest was very expensive and wasn't accessible to a lot of players. However, this one not only has two new characters, both of which are basically free. One of them you can just get normally, and the other will be available with tokens from the token event or shop that should be accessible next week. However, the best part of the update is obviously that we get discounts for a certain number of T4 characters, as well as gaining more T4 materials by clearing World Boss Legend and Giant Boss Raid daily. It's also important to note that now we also have the possibility of getting characters that are tier 2 going straight to tier 4 by also getting their tier 3, so it makes the game a little bit more interesting because pretty much any character can be upgraded to become useful or potentially meta in the game. But anyways, for this video, I'm taking a look at Beta Ray Bill. I first tested him without any damage procs at all, and then ended up using a CTP of Rage at the end, just to see how much of an improvement he got. I'll basically let you know up front that I don't think the character is meta for the most competitive game modes like ABX and ABL, and his kit isn't really suited for PvP, so he won't really excel there. However, the character is very strong for PvE content, and there is the potential that he gains more value depending on what kind of content is coming up. You also have to consider that he is part of the Guardians of the Galaxy team-up collection, so he has the potential to reach up to 35% Pierce if you max out that collection and have 25% Pierce on your cards already, as well as an additional 40% attack on top of that. So for the first test, I did stage 24 of Null without using Beta Ray Bill's leadership or any supports. I usually test on this stage up to 31, depending on the character's type and the restrictions that they can meet, just to see how they perform without any kind of additional help. I obviously also didn't have a damage proc, so it gives you a sense of how good the character's base kit is. As you can see from the last clip and this one, he is pretty strong for War Boss Legend. I was able to complete the last fight with over 2 minutes left, so I decided to see how high of a stage I could push on Null, and I was able to complete stage 69 with close to 40 seconds left as well. If you plan on building the character for PvE, which is what I would highly recommend you use him for, then a CTP of Rage is more than likely your most ideal option overall. It makes the character very easy to play, and you don't have to really worry about missing your procs. However, with that said, the character is proc friendly to an extent, and you can utilize something like a CTP of Energy, or if you want to get a little bit more usability with him in things like Alliance Conquest, you could also consider something like a CTP of Destruction. The one build option or CTP that I don't recommend you use on him is a CTP of Judgment or an Element Damage Obelisk. He already has a high amount of element damage in his kit and his support passive that you're basically going to be hitting diminishing returns or hit the soft cap if you're trying to stack up element damage. You also have to consider that you could be using supports that increase element damage further, and you'd basically already be close to or at the cap for the benefit that you get from element damage stacking. Another build option that you might want to consider for diehard ABX and ABL fans is a CTP of Insight if you plan on using another character for the specific days when Beta Ray Bill is also accessible, ones like Odin or Gladiator. Regardless of your build, you can see that at level 80 he gets a huge improvement. I was able to clear the same stage about 2 minutes and 20 seconds faster than before. Because he was easily able to do stage 69, I pushed up to stage 79, again with no damage proc, and he was able to easily do that as well, with over 2 minutes and 20 seconds or so left over. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that Mephisto might have some resistances to fire damage, but because Beta Ray Bill is universal, he has an advantage over Mephisto's blast type, so that might cancel out, and despite that, he also has an attack increase on his 3rd skill, an attack increase on his 4th skill, and a 100% damage increase on his 5th skill, on top of the damage accumulation on the Awakening skill, and when you get him to tier 4, he also has the damage accumulation on that skill as well. I obviously didn't need the tier 4 in this particular instance, since I was able to run through Mephisto with about 2 minutes and 40 seconds left. Besides the character being strong offensively, he is also pretty easy to play. You're basically just going to be rotating through 3 skills, and since those have iframes in them, you're going to be pretty safe from the boss's damage. You also have Invincible on the 5th skill, damage reduction in his kit, as well as healing on his 3rd skill, and on top of that, you also have an emergency heal that activates if you go under 40% health, which is pretty useful if you get stuck in any kind of CC or lockdown versus the boss. Again, you can see how good he is offensively. He's able to clear stage 69 of Ultron at level 80 without a damage proc. I was actually almost able to clear stage 59 of Gore as well, which would show you just how impressive he was, but I didn't really take the time to play the fight properly, so I was off by about 5 health bars. But I'm sure if that I played it a little bit better, he definitely could or should be able to complete this stage with my current setup. One thing worth noting that I didn't mention is that the range on Beta Ray Bill's skills is actually very good, and the tracking is pretty solid as well. There aren't going to be very many instances where you go into your rotation and the boss leaves your skill range and just cancels your rotation, since you're primarily going to finish with the 5th skill, and that has pretty good tracking and will go the set distance that the boss usually moves to finish your rotation. That's one of the reasons why Beta Ray Bill did so much better than some of the other characters on high gore stages, since his rotation doesn't get cancelled nearly as often. It's also one of the reasons why he did so well versus the Jean stage or the Dark Phoenix stage, finishing with over 1 minute and 20 seconds left, since Jean also moves around a lot and has a lot of annoying animations that might kind of interrupt your skills. If you're able to get the character to tier 4, he gets an insane stat increase. Considering that he is native, he goes up by almost 25,000 energy attack and another 25,000 additional HP. For me, that puts him over 100,000 energy attack, and this doesn't factor in the element damage layer on top of that. Your most ideal striker option is probably going to be Thor, which is pretty thematic for him, but he is also order tagged, so it'll max out your T4 skill. And you will also get a very strong or possibly one of the best strikers for the order tag. Other than that, you use whoever else you have order tag that is at tier 4 or close to it, or possibly another very strong striker like Ghost Rider. With the tier 4, I was able to shave off about 10 seconds from the clear time, but that's hardly representative of the improvement that he gets, because he's completing this fight so quickly and the animation and phase changes are really limiting that. With the Mighty CTP of Rage equipped, I did the same test again, and I was able to shave off another 35 seconds on top of that, but again, that isn't really representative of the improvement that you get overall, because this fight is so quick. On Mephisto, the tier 4 took off about 1 minute from the clear time, and with the Mighty CTP of Rage equipped afterwards, it took off another 20 seconds. Because for the harder world bosses the fights are longer, you can see a better representation of the improvement. On stage 69 of Ultron, with the tier 4, I was able to complete the fight about 1 minute and 40 seconds quicker. With the CTP of Rage, I'm able to take off another minute from that clear time and finish the stage with 1 minute and 40 seconds left. On the Gore stage, I was able to hit that same 5 health bar mark from before with about 1 minute and 30 seconds left, or 1 minute and 30 seconds faster, and was able to complete the stage entirely with around 60 seconds remaining. So with just the tier 4 and no damage proc, I was able to complete that stage in 4 minutes, and then with the Mighty CTP of Rage, I was able to complete it in 1 minute and 43 seconds, or a 2 minute and 20 second improvement roughly. In the Dark Phoenix stage, it was about 1 minute improvement with just the tier 4 and no damage proc, and then again with the Mighty CTP of Rage, it was close to about 1 minute improvement on top of that. On the Alliance battle side, the character has most of the cancel effects for the various different seasons. He is missing Silence for ABX, and I believe Snare and I think Incapacitation for ABL, so he won't necessarily be used on those particular seasons unless you can get a tier 4 striker that also has those cancel effects. You can see from this clip that Beta Ray Bill is definitely good for ABX. He has a high hit count, and I was able to score almost 11 million with no damage proc and only at level 70, not even level 80. However, the issue is that being good doesn't really cut it. You basically want to be the best option for that particular day, and he isn't really that, considering that for the Universal Hero Day, you have access to a character like Ghost Rider who ends up scoring more than him. If you don't have access to Ghost Rider's latest uniform, however, Beta Ray Bill is definitely a solid substitute. You can see that when I got him to tier 4, added Thor as a striker, and equipped that mighty CTP of Rage, that I was able to increase my score by around 3 million, and was able to score almost 14 million with him. However, if you do have Ghost Rider's latest uniform, then he will eclipse Beta Ray Bill's score, and he will mostly just function as a support for Alliance Battle Legend, since you probably already have access to enough supports for ABX. Similarly, in ABL, he does pretty well for having no additional supports. I was able to score 8.1 million with his tier 4 and that mighty CTP of Rage. However, the same issue rises here as in ABX. For the Alien Hero Day, if you have access to Odin, or more than likely Gladiator now that he is probably the new meta for this day, then they will end up outscoring him, and you're more than likely going to end up building Beta Ray Bill for support if you are focused on ABX and ABL. I actually tested out some different rotations for the character, and the one that I found that worked the most effective was to use the Awakening skill right from the get-go, and then cancel it after he lands on the ground and he becomes visible again. There's a lot of lightning that blocks it, but you can actually cancel it when he becomes visible on the ground as opposed to when he hits the hammer with Thor to get the most hits out of it. Then immediately go into your 4th skill and delay cancel that after the animation of Thor appears in the air into the 3rd skill, which you then delay cancel after you see him throw the hammer, and then you finish on the 5th skill. So the rotation is then 6, delay cancel 4, slight delay cancel 3, slight delay cancel 5. When you don't have your Awakening, you just do the regular rotation without it, which would just be your 4, delay cancel 3, delay cancel 5. Although Beta Ray Bill isn't really meta in the top competitive game modes as a damage dealer, he is actually really strong in Giant Boss Raid Dormammu. I was able to solo clear the fight just at level 70 with no damage proc in about 3 minutes and 40 seconds. When I got him to tier 4 with a CTP of Rage, I found out that I could solo the fight in about 54 seconds, and I'm pretty sure he is now my fastest clearer for Giant Boss Raid. Keep in mind that I don't have Jean or Ghost Rider built for PvE, but I think that one of the reasons why Beta Ray Build does so well in Giant Boss Raid is because he benefits off of his own leadership and support. He also has a leadership tag, so you can use White Fox to benefit off of that support, and because he doesn't have guaranteed crit in his kit, you can also use Coulson with his latest uniform to give him a massive boost overall. And the fact that he is an awakened character means that you don't have to build up to T3, you can just immediately go into it and just burst the boss down very quickly. Also, if you're wondering how the rotation changes when he's at tier 4, you basically just save the tier 4 skill for when you're about to use your skills, so you build up that accumulation, and you simply just cancel the 1st and 2nd skill as often as you can, so that you can build up the tier 4 faster. By the way, I didn't really test him in Timeline, but in Alliance Conquest, if you do want to use him, like I said, go with a CTP of Destruction, and you'll get the benefit of that penetration, and because he goes into iframes, you can burst them down while they're just sitting around if they don't have iframe ignore. If they do have iframe ignore, you also could potentially survive their attack, since you have that emergency heal, and potentially burst them down while they're kind of lingering in that AoE that he's cast. This is with a CTP of Rage, by the way, which kind of gives you an idea of how he performs and how much better he could perform with a more ideal build. As you can see from the review, the character is really strong for PvE game modes like World Boss Legend and Giant Boss Raid. However, he does falter in ABX and ABL because he isn't the best option for those days. And for that reason, for a lot of people, he likely isn't worth the tier 4 upgrade. However, for people that don't have those characters upgraded yet, like Ghost Rider and Gladiator, he is a really solid option, and I would argue that he is the best universal alien character available now, since he has so many different War Boss Legend stages available to him, considering that he is also has the leadership tag similar to Thor, and ends up outperforming him. You also have to consider that he has that Guardians of the Galaxy team-up collection, meaning that he has access to an additional 10% Pierce on top of that, which means that he is just outright the best World Boss Legend universal alien character available, and could potentially have a lot of value if tougher World Boss Legend stages emerge. It's also worth noting that if a new Giant Boss Raid or World Boss Legend stage emerges that requires only tier 4 characters, then Beta Ray Build's value will increase quite a lot since you have access to another support and great leadership. However, these are hypotheticals for now, and for the time being, I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting the character to tier 4, especially if you have those better options available. You can simply just get him to level 80 and still benefit a lot from him since he is very strong at that level as well. It's also worth keeping in mind that Beta Ray Bill is a universal character, and with this update being centered around Annihilators, it's very possible that Silver Surfer could be getting a tier 4 very soon, and you might need those books for him. So that is probably another reason why you might not want to tier 4 him right away if you can't tier 4 a lot of characters. That pretty much sums up Beta Ray Bill. He is a very strong character that has the potential to have even more value in the future, but might not necessarily be worth the tier 4 upgrade at the moment. Hopefully, if I can get Gladiator's potential realized soon, he will be the next character that I review, followed by Quasar and Icon in the same video. Hopefully you found this video entertaining or useful. If you did, please consider liking, subscribing, and possibly sharing this with others. You can even leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to get back to it. But as always, I appreciate people taking the time to watch these, so thank you, but the video is now over.